Here's what you can look forward to on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
You don't even have to raise that top line revenue because by implementing these tax deductions, you're going to have additional cash flow. But we can also go into the business and, develop key performance indicators to determine, okay, is my investment in marketing really paying off? Is my investment in this employee really paying off? Is this investment in this, department really paying off? What should I be doing throughout the year to grow that revenue? And it's not always about cutting expenses, but sometimes finding additional ways to raise that revenue.
What's in the box? Oh, it's just a Nice Guys on Business podcast. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
Welcome back to the Nice Guys on Business podcast. Of course, my name is Doug Sandler, and we're going to do something a little different today. We're also going to share this with our TurnKey podcast because I was trying to figure out a really cool name for this episode, Jeff, before I even started doing some research for you. And the one that I came up with is the Tax Trap. But you've probably heard that a few hundred times before, right?
Yeah, I have actually. I kind of have a motto that I used early on in my marketing. Helping keeping business owners out of the tax trap was, kind of my tagline and how I would sign off on things.
I love it. So today's guest, obviously, you just heard from him. His name is Jeff Trapp. He's not only a serial entrepreneur, but he is also a guy that is a tax strategist. He's a podcast host. Are you a best-selling author? Because I seem to have those a lot on my show also.
Not yet, but I'd like to be. So maybe in the next 5-10 years, we'll
all right. So
on that
maybe
bestseller list.
We'll make an introduction to you to one of our publishing clients as well when you're ready for that. But that'll be fun too. So whether you are just one of those guys like me that hates to have conversations about taxes, but know that they're that necessary evil, and one of the things that Jeff and I will talk about in today's episode is while your best investment is in you, your least invested money should be in the federal government because they're taking enough of it from us as it is in taxes. And I'm excited to have this conversation with Jeff. I promise, even though taxes can sometimes be a subject that leaves you in the doldrums or doesn't leave you wanting a little bit more, this conversation, I'm going to give you some pushback, and I'm also going to share some of my own the things that my faults, my hurdles, the things that have challenged me. So maybe you can help me solve some problems too. Jeff, I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business and the TurnKey podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much, Doug, for having me. I'm honored to be here.
So you started way back in the beginning as a pizza shop. I guess, were you working part-time there? Were you doing deliveries or were you working in the shop itself?
I was actually working in the shop itself, taking orders, back in the kitchen, that type of thing, washing dishes, slicing up the pizza before it'd come out to you as the customer, and doing the cashier and that type of thing.
So how does a guy go from that? I was in the cookie business very early on, same age, 15, 16 years old. I went from that to some sort of mortgage business, real estate, all the things before I finally struck upon the DJ business, which lasted me 30 years as a career. Just retired from that in March or May of this year, 2023, and have been a full-time podcaster pretty much for the last 8 or 9 years. And so what's the stuff, how to make the connection, connect the dots for me from pizza guy to tax strategist. There seems to be a few dashes in the process there. What are they?
Yeah, right. So, growing up, I lived in a household where my stepdad was a CPA and tax attorney. And he said, you can come to work and prepare tax returns with me, but I'm not going to pay you to do that. And so I decided, well, the pizza joint down the road is going to pay me a whopping $4.75 an hour. I better go down there and work for him because that's so much better than doing taxes. And so that's how I ended up doing stuff at the pizza joint. But over the years, I always said, I'm never going to do taxes. I'm never going to be in this realm. I don't want to be a tax strategist. You guys are always working late nights, weekends. Nobody really seems happy in the tax world, right? And so I actually went out of college and got a job in sales and then decided, you know what, that tax stuff really wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And so I went back and got some of my tax and accounting credentials.
Well, what I love about it, if there is one thing that I love about taxes, it's like this huge puzzle. Now, I'm not a tax law guy. I don't want to have to keep up with tax law, but one of the things I do enjoy doing is trying to figure out creative, very gray, in the gray, definitely nothing illegal, but I like to stay legal completely, but I like to take advantage of every bit of gray that I can, things like, it's not even really gray. It's just stuff that now is obvious to me, but at the time I'm like, oh, this is interesting, like an HSA, a health spending account, or a 401k, or an IRA, or a SEP, or any of the tax deferred or tax free options that I had. Why are people not taking advantage? Is it just lack of education and know-how, Jeff?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a lack of education and know-how. And I think a lot of people think about taxes as a cost. It's a cost of doing business. It's a cost to pay an accountant. It's a cost to pay the IRS that tax bill, or maybe you have a state tax bill. And so what you really need to do is kind of flip that on its head and think more about taxes and investing in a good tax strategist as something that's going to have a good ROI. And really, it's just a lack of knowledge or a lack of know-how. A lot of times we'll sit down with our clients that just come to us, and they're like, I don't even know what I can deduct in my business. Right. And it's really, we're just starting at level one with that basic education. Well, here's a profit and loss statement, and here's, 100 different things that you can deduct in your business.
Well, before we get into the tax strategy, and I do want to talk about the differences between a tax strategist or an accountant and or a CPA, or even a certified, or what do you call them, a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. I want to talk about some of those terms. But I heard the staggering statistic, and it was one of those official ones. So it was one that was, I'm pretty sure it's real, and maybe you can confirm this or just say, oh no, that's just one of life's great mysteries, or that's a urban myth or urban legend, is that 25% of the people out there that own their own business have $0 saved for retirement. Now, do you know anything about that number?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it seems a little bit low. I think there was
really?
a study. Yeah, there was a study that just came out, or actually not a study, but a survey that came out just a few days ago that I think it's like 80 or 85% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're probably not putting aside anything for retirement. And a lot of people think that Social Security is their retirement. Well, there was a study done last year, and they said that Social Security is supposed to run out by 2034. So if Social Security is your only avenue for retirement, you might be out of luck.
And do you think that's the reality? I mean, I don't want to do it, try any scare tactics on people, but they've been saying for decades that Social Security is going to run out of money for every 3 people that are collecting Social Security. There's now only one person putting in, where it was for every, one person putting in, there was 10 or 10 people putting in, there was only one person taking out. So I don't want to try the scare tactic thing, but won't they change what's going on in government if maybe they'll raise the retirement age again? Maybe there'll be something to help them save it. But do you see Social Security going away?
It's really tough to predict what our government's going to do. But, from a historical standpoint, what they've typically done is they've extended the age in which you can draw upon Social Security. And so what I would anticipate is they'll probably extend the age again, because as humans, we're living a lot longer. So you might be able to draw on that at 75, 76, 77, who knows? And then, another thing which I think they'll do is they're going to have to raise tax rates. I mean, the former CPA of the United States, David Walker, who served under President Clinton and President Bush, has basically come out and said, in order to pay for Social Security, in order to pay for all of the money that was printed during COVID, which is 40% of all the dollars currently in circulation, we're going to have to double the tax rate. So you might be in the 25%, 24% tax rate. Is your tax rate going to go to 48%? Or if you're in the 37% tax bracket, is your tax rate going to go to 74%? No, because we have a progressive tax scale, most people are going to fall right around that 48 to 52% tax bracket. So that's what you'll be, taxed on when it comes to retirement, whether that's your tax Social Security, whether that's your 401ks that you put money into. So you might actually be paying a higher tax rate when you draw on that money later
Wow.
on down the road.
That's incredible. Okay, so let's get into the differences between someone that does what you do, tax strategy, versus someone that does tax preparation or an accountant. So share the differences, or maybe you cross that line between what you do and what services that you provide.
Yeah, great. So, we offer tax preparation services, but most people are most familiar with the tax preparation service where, you gather all of your documents maybe in February and March, or maybe you're a late filer and you wait till the September, October deadline and you compile all these documents and, you give your accountant kind of that proverbial digital shoebox, or maybe you actually give them a shoebox of receipts. And then you hope and pray that you don't owe very much money to the government, but you have no clue. You have no clue what your business has been doing. And so that's probably 90 to 95% of people in my profession. That's what they do, is they prepare taxes. Well, from a tax strategy or tax strategist standpoint, we offer tax advisory services. So it's proactive planning throughout the year where we meet with you. We have packages on a quarterly or monthly basis to strategize on taxes. We unearth 70,000 pages of tax code to find out what strategies are best for you, best for your personal life, best for your business, best for saving for retirement. And we really want to make sure that you keep more of your hard-earned money instead of giving that to the government.
If you're one of those people that are in our community right now, and this is how I was probably up until just a handful of years ago, if you're one of those people out in our community and you are 11 months and 29 days into your year and you hand over all of this stuff to your accountant, you're like, I hope I don't owe any money. I hope I get money back. And if you don't know that very early on in the process, you are doing absolutely no strategy at all. You're not strategizing about how do I best not only reduce my tax liability, but it's the worst time. It's the time that you're basically being leaned over the coal, the barrel, and saying, okay, give it to me a little bit harder because I'm not really sure what I'm going to owe or what I'm getting back. Why does anybody want to be in that guessing game? Why don't they know that coming up with a strategy, or at least a game plan year to year, even if it's not a strategy that lasts you more than the 12 months, why don't people want to put that strategy together? What are they afraid of?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're afraid of the unknown. And, dealing with going to your tax strategist or dealing with taxes, I think is a lot like going to the dentist for some people. People just hate to go to the dentist. It's never fun. You never receive any good news, right, when you go to the dentist. And I think that's how people associate tax strategists or CPAs or tax preparers. That's just something they don't want to deal with. And a lot of times people are just so focused on their business, scaling, growing, hiring, that they don't want to deal with the taxes. They don't understand that. So they're just focused on what they're good at and the problems that they have in their business.
One of the best parts about having a tax strategy, and again, I'd love your comments on this because this is just from my perspective. One of the best parts about having a tax strategy is that you and your strategist are involved or work together as a team to try to figure out what is the best way to reduce your tax liability throughout the entire year. Or better yet, how do you raise your income throughout the entire year? Not just reduce your tax liability, but how can I actually boost my income? In the process, you get tasty little tidbits like, hey, I'm noticing that you're not adding enough to your 401k, or I'm noticing that, or you're simple, or I notice you're not contributing the max amount to your HSA, rather than at the end of the year saying, hey, the best way to reduce your tax liability for this is, hey, just go ahead and put $4,800 into your HSA. Well, a lot of people don't have $4,800 just sitting in a savings account. It's much easier for me to say, I'm going to take $375 a month and put it into my HSA. I'd love to hear your comments on the strategy side throughout the entire year rather than just the last minute bulge of information.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you wait till the end of the year and then you have to implement all of these strategies, you're moving a lot of cash. And that's a lot of cash out of your business. That's a lot of cash out of your pocket. So if you're meeting throughout the year with your tax strategist and kind of annualizing these things, it's going to be much, much easier to implement, get the tax deductions. And you don't even have to raise that top line revenue, because by implementing these tax deductions, you're going to have additional cash flow. But we can also go into the business and, develop key performance indicators to determine, okay, is my investment in marketing really paying off? Is my investment in this employee really paying off? Is this investment in this department really paying off? What should I be doing throughout the year to grow that revenue? And it's not always about cutting expenses, but sometimes finding additional ways to raise that revenue.
The other thing that I've always heard, and again, I try to live my life in its simplest common denominator, and it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So if you're making $50,000 and that's your top line, by reducing your tax liability by $10,000, you're in essence, you're giving yourself that raise of 10 grand. You're not even making any more money on the top line. You're actually just increasing your bottom line. And I love that type of strategy too. Where do most people find their starting point? You do an analysis of what their business is. You determine the type of business, whether it's an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, sole proprietorship. And do you give them that advice in the early stages, or what's the beginning part of the relationship look like with you and your clients?
Yeah. So, it's really building that foundation. So we try to determine, if they're ready for that legal entity structure. What's that income level look like? Do they have multiple businesses? Do they have rental properties or other investments that we need to incorporate into the strategy? And we really break it down, like you said, to its simplest form. Okay, you should be this legal entity structure for this business and this legal entity structure for your investments. These are the types of things that you can deduct now that you have a legal entity structure, because there's different deductions for different entities. And so you want to make them aware of that. There's different types of planning strategies that we can take advantage of, like taking loans from your company, and that you can plan and utilize those for properties or for retirement and things like that. So we really want to strategize to minimize the taxes. So really, within the first 30 days of working together, we're going to lay out that solid foundation where we're going to give you the high level view of like, hey, this is what we want to do over the next 12 months for you and your business. And this is how we're going to save you money on taxes.
So I noticed that you guys take definitely a team approach to doing all this strategy and building and helping provide advice to your clients. I also noticed that it's at least based upon your homepage, your website, it's you and 7 women. So I'm assuming there's a lot of female energy that's going on in there. And I know women tend to be better savers than guys. So you've surrounded yourself definitely with the proper element within your organization. Was that by design, or did it just happen to be that way, Jeff?
It just happened to be that way. We hire anybody throughout the United States, and they just happen to be the best candidates that we could get. But we have added one man to the team since that photo was taken. So we've got to get some updated photos. But, women tend to be more analytical, but they've been absolutely phenomenal. And I absolutely love them. They do a great job. Our clients love them. And sometimes even when they call for those meetings, you get 2 women on the phone, they start talking about where they got their hair done and all that kind of thing. So we have those relationships with our clients.
That's the best part about it is I love, and I'm saying this with all due respect to women in the tax workplace. They get it. They get it a lot better than men. Men just kind of want to drive forward that bottom line and that revenue and sales and all of that. And women really want to bring that energy, and they really want a lasting relationship that you're going to have with either your bank account or your clients. And I do appreciate and respect that about women in the tax, especially in the tax side. So we don't have to go any deeper into it than that. It's just you surrounded yourself with a great team, and I appreciate the fact that it's a great photo. That guy, he's just temporary. No, I'm just kidding. I am absolutely just kidding. So tell me, what is the best way for someone that's in our community to want to reach out, or what's the best way for them to get information about how you do what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, you can visit our website at thetaxplanningpros.com. That will give you all the information about our company. But if you're just wanting to get to know us and get to have some weekly tax tips, I do have a podcast called the Jeff Trapp Podcast. It's typically anywhere from about 7 to 12 minutes. We'll give you the latest updates on the economy, business, and taxes. And that's a great way to get to know me and what we do.
That gives us a great opportunity to talk about that for just a quick second, because part of the crowd that's going to be listening to this is our TurnKey podcast audience and their community as well. And I really want to chat about, just for a quick second, how did you strike upon starting a podcast? It's not necessarily the personality of a tax strategist or a tax planner to help to put together something that involves any level of personality. But you started this podcast, and I've listened to a handful of episodes. And I was listening to one, I guess, your early beginnings and your most recent strategy or your most recent podcast as well. And you really do bring a lot of personality to a subject that could be a little bit more on the dry side. So share the origin story of the podcast.
Yeah, so I was meeting with a team that was developing my website and doing some of my search engine optimization. And they were kind of saying, in order to create some content and build your brand, you should just do a weekly podcast, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, give a tax tip, and, just kind of do it by yourself and see how it goes. And so I said, well, I can do 5 to 10 minutes. That's not very hard. And so I've just been doing that every week. I think we've taken 1 week off, and we've done, over 60 episodes of just tax tips, tax laws, and everything. And that's really how it got started. And eventually we'll be able to simulcast those on YouTube and other platforms.
Awesome. That's a great idea. Definitely double dipping with content distribution. That's always a good thing to do. When it comes to podcasting, what's some of the stuff that you leave to the pros, and what's some of the stuff that you do on your own? For example, if I were to come to you as a tax strategist, I would not plan on doing my own taxes after that. I'm gonna stay either with you or whoever you recommend. So what's the stuff that you leave to the pros when it comes to podcasting?
So I have a team that puts together pretty much everything. So the only thing that I do is I do the research for the episode, and then I record it. And then I say, hey, here's the audio file, splice it up, put it on the platforms, and, figure out the intro, the outro, all of that stuff. And I let them do what they're good at, and I just do what I'm good at.
That's awesome. And finally, just about the podcast, before we leave that and make sure that our community has ability to reach out to you. Most people get into podcasting for really one of three reasons. They want to do it to grow their community. Second, they want to do it to grow their influence or build their influence. And thirdly, they want to do it to make money. If you had to prioritize community, influence, and money, what would be the order in which you would put those three?
I would say probably community, influence, then the money.
Excellent. So you look to build your community through your podcast, and it's a way for you to educate them, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we share our podcast with our clients as well. And so sometimes there's something that comes up on the podcast that we haven't talked about yet. And they're like, they make a note and we talk about it at our next meeting. And so it's really become a way for us to,
Nice.
I guess, even be more proactive, because there's just so many different strategies on there. And you don't always have time to cover every single strategy in an hour meeting.
Terrific. And just when it comes to building your own business, is it okay if I ask you a question just about entrepreneurship? And, because I know I have a lot of entrepreneurs that probably are totally relating to everything that you're saying from a business building perspective. But I'd love to know some of the things that are still your hurdles, or the things that you are still trying to accomplish when it comes to building your own business, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably quite a few, but, hiring is always tough. Finding top-end talent in the tax industry is very, very tough. And you have to be prepared to pay people very, very well, offer a lot of benefits. Also, making sure that we have the right systems and processes in place. We have good HR, and we have good training for our team. I think those are really kind of the key things that we always strive to improve.
Man, you struck on the same handful of things that we as a production company also deal with as well. Making sure we have great systems in place, great customer service, a great team, paying the right the right fee for the right job, and above and beyond everything else, making sure that our clients are happy too. All of that while you're running the business and doing the selling and the marketing and the process improvement and all of those things at the same time. Jeff, am I missing anything? Any questions that I should be asking you that I'm not asking, or things that you've heard on other podcasts that you're like, hey, I really want to make sure I hit this point home with your audience, Doug?
Yeah, nothing that I can think of off of the top of my head. Just make sure if you have a business that you make sure that you have a good tax strategist, so that way that you're keeping the most money possible year after year. You're creating that cash flow. You're creating that long-term wealth legacy for you and your family. It's more important for your kids and grandkids to keep that money instead of the government.
Totally, 100%. That's a great ending point right there. For those in our community, I will make sure we put a link in the show notes, not only for Jeff's LinkedIn account, but so that you have access to his website as well, the taxplanningpros.com, and his podcast, the Jeff Trapp podcast as well. Jeff, thanks for sharing. Thanks for your inspiration. And thanks for being here on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice or the power of a great tax strategy going into tax paying time. Thanks again to Jeff Trapp. All of his information will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Seriously, it'll only hurt for a minute or two. 10 tops.